This is the new controller for the CNC machine. It's actually using an old computer case, a ATX power supply, a 24-volt power supply, and then the rest of the peripherals which drive the CNC. What I want to try and do by doing this was actually have a unit which is separate from the machine. It is all connected to the machine with aviation plugs. So I got X, Y master, Y slave and Z on the back, and we have a power in supply, which is actually the ATX power supply switch, the green and the black, which switch the ATX power supply, and this one is for the limit switches. So everything is on aviation plugs. Each of the aviation plugs are grounded and shielded so that we have a good continuity and hopefully no noise in any signals going from the machine over to this. I've tried to take extra care about that because before, with it being close over there, I never really had any issues with any noise at all. In fact, it was very good, but just difficult to work. And I wanted to use two motors, one on this side and one on that side, to drive the Y carriage. Now this Y carriage has no movement at all, other than a very small little backlash in the drive gear, drive screw. Going back to this machine, we have, like I say, the ATX power supply, and then if we turn the switch on here, this actually will power up the power supply. You'll hear the fans kick in. So the fans are kicked in. The solid state relay up there is now energized, and the 24-volt power supply is energized, and the supply coming now to all of the drives are powered up, and also a 9-volt supply here which is fed from a 220-volt, which also comes off the back end of this solid state relay, is actually feeding a 9-volt, which I'm not sure that I actually need because I never needed it before, but I thought I would put it in belt and braces. If I don't need it, I unplug it and it stays there. I did put two fans in. They are rather noisy, but I wanted to blow air across it because this is actually going into a cabinet under the machine. Although I never had any issues before, but I did have a fan blown across it when it was in the smaller box. What I've also done is added 4 fuses here. So I've got X, Y master, Y slave and Z for each of the modules. So each of these is protected by a 2-amp fuse. So if you have any issues, hopefully it will take the fuse and not take power supply, yada 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 yada. What I've also got down here is I've added an 817 module, which is actually going to be the interface, an optocoupler interface for the limit switches, which I hope to get working again at some point. The last time I wasn't very successful, but I think I was running a different version of Gerbil, so I need to update this with a later version. But I've got 2 or 3 Arduinos. What I might do is flash another Arduino, put a different Arduino on here, and then leave this one, because I know this one is really stable and really good. Really works very well. I would rather have this and not have the limit switches if I've got a stable system. So that's a very short run through. I have moved it. Each of the axes move pretty well. I have tried it using Universal G-code sender. So if I go into Universal G-code sender and I move my the Y-axis I'm really the most nervous about, because it's running a master and a slave, and the master and the slave are run in parallel with each other here on the control wires. They're 2 separate motors, 2 separate drives, but it's paralleled up to the Arduino down here. So what signals this gets. I am hoping they stay in sync. If they don't stay in sync, then we have to look at another solution, maybe tying the 2 motors together somehow mechanically and going back to one, or the 2 screws mechanically and going back to one drive, because one drive will run it. But I'd like to try the second motor. It's a it's a try. The USB cable for the machine actually goes here. This one here is coming down to my PC, which is down under here, but at the moment I don't have a fly lead long enough to go from the USB port at the back to the front of the computer, but when it's in the cabinet it will be next to the computer, so the shorter cable will reach, then this will go back on there. If we try and move the machine, I've actually got it running at 100 millimeters. So if we move the y-axis 100 millimeters, it runs pretty well. I'm quite happy with that. It was a little noisy to start with, but I think because I put the new screw and nut on the other side and the motor, it actually needed lubricating. So I've lubricated it. So now it's all running nice. If I change this to, change the step distance to 200 or 300. 200 I think. I can't come back again because I've got 200 in there, so if I change this to 100 and then I come back one more. So now we're back here, and this, when I measure it with the vernier, I've ran this backwards and forwards quite a lot now. I measure between here and over there, we're about 5 millimeters on each side. So at the moment I'm very happy, but this has nothing. I mean, before it had a little bit of a shimmy, it didn't really cause any issues to the carving, but I was just always not really so happy with it. I like to have it a bit more stable, so I thought I'd bite the bullet and do this. I was going to run the spindle from the Arduino, and I have a relay module to go in here which I was going to use, but I'm not so happy. I've got enough mains power in here to do what I want. I want to keep the mains power for the spindle, because the spindle 48 volt supply is up here, and the controller and the switch to switch it on here. I might take this switch enable into the unit, but at a later date maybe, but I don't want to take this. I don't want to put this into that cabinet because of some noise issues that may happen. This is probably going to stay the same. I'm quite happy with that. It doesn't give me any issues on there moving it. And the vacuum cleaner unit will go back in here. But later, probably tomorrow, we take this computer out of here. I put a wider cabinet in, and then we have the computer and the CNC machine controller actually in one cabinet under here, and that will stop the dust issues, because there was a fair amount of dust coming through here, and with it having one central motor in here, I used to have a fan here just to blow on that motor because it was fairly enclosed, and that I noticed when I took it all apart, and you see on the previous video that the power supply which was mounted under here actually was getting quite dirty. But overall, other than the fan noise, I'm really quite happy with that. I might actually put a temperature sensor in here, maybe a temperature sensor on the drives, and then kick the fans in from a temperature sensor. I'm not sure yet, but I think when it's inside there it'll be okay. But overall I'm quite happy with the setup. Like I say, all my power is up here out the way. I took spare cables that I don't need and took them in here out the way, so there's nothing. Basically all my high voltage is up there and all my lower voltages are down here. So with luck we're okay. The base is grounded, the frame, this frame is grounded back up here to the main machine. There's a ground wire from here which I haven't put in yet, but there's a separate ground wire from the ground of the case, and that will go to the CNC machine directly to alleviate any loops. But tomorrow we try and maybe we get on and do a couple of cuts, but I think I finish off this and put this in. So I hope this helps anybody. We'll see how it fares. I wasn't too happy to run 2 motors on one drive. A lot of people have done that, but I want to try and get a little bit more speed out of it. But I was always nervous running 1 motor because that's a fairly big carriage on there, and there's a lot of weight in that carriage, and I didn't really want to run the carriage on 1 motor at higher speeds. So tomorrow I will tune it using Gerbil, using universal G-code sender, and from that point we move on and then see where we are. So thank you for watching. I hope this helps, and at the moment it's looking pretty good, I think. Thank you.